controlled and dominated by a Muslim community. If somebody was found, maybe who had beaten up someone, and they'd ask that person, what are you? Are you a Christian? Are you a Jew? Are you a Muslim? What are you? And if they said they were a Christian, they were sent to a Christian court to be tried under Christian law, not under, even though it was a Muslim-dominated country. And this is the example that the Prophet gave them, to allow people to be judged according to their Sharia, according to their law. But in Islam, we live under a Sharia that we follow and must adhere to. And that law does not go against the laws of the land. You'll find it, for example, in the UK, in South Africa, and many other countries in the world, that there's both a legal system and a Sharia system in play. So if you want to get divorced, husband and wife don't want to live together anymore, they will go to the Sharia court. And at the Sharia court, they will say, I want to get divorced, and the council will sit together, and they will make a decision on how much you need to pay in maintenance, what happens with the children, and then you would sign them. After which, you then need to go to the legal system of the country and get divorced in the legal system as well. So both have to be in play. You can't just get divorced under the Sharia system and ignore the legal system. So in Islam, there is this already happening in many countries in the world. In South Africa, you see that both systems are in play. And this keeps your rights protected both as Muslims, as a Muslim and living in a non-Muslim society. Both are very important to do. Does this get abused? Of course it does. Of course we see abuse of these powers. And this again is not the religion of Islam or the belief system. We don't like the word religion. You know, sometimes people say, what religion do you belong to? And Islam is not really a religion per se, if you think of it in comparison to other belief systems in the world. It is a set of guidelines to help you to live a successful life. And in that is the core belief in the oneness of God, the submission to God. And because of the submission to God, remember I said that central hub, everything else comes off that. And so we believe that if in submitting to God, we'll be successful in every other. So it's not a religion. And sometimes we can put religion on one side, and we can put our economics on another side. We can put our education on another side. We can separate these things. In Islam, that's not possible. We combine these things together as a whole. I'm quite sure that during the question and answer time we're going to have some interesting questions coming through to clarify some of these issues that I've spoken about today, God willing. Coming to the end of this topic of rights and responsibility, it is protected in America in your Constitution, the freedom of speech. It is, you have been given the rights and the responsibility to say anything you want, whatever you want, as long as it doesn't infringe on somebody else's rights and doesn't infringe on somebody else's freedoms. So there are limitations there. On the highway, on coming from the airport to here, yes, I think we call it a highway. Coming from the airport yesterday, there was a policeman, and he pulled over a vehicle because it was speeding. But when that person got their license, that license made them responsible citizens. There is, in a way, no such thing as the word freedom. Freedom possibly does not exist. A lot of people would argue with that. We spoke on Friday that many politicians, many economists use the word freedom, political freedom, financial freedom, debt-free. They use that word free all the time. But possibly that word doesn't really exist. The word should be replaced, just like rights and responsibilities, with the word license. You can drive as fast as you want on the highways of America as long as it's under, what's the speed limit? 75 miles an hour. As long as you drive under 70 miles an hour. So there's not really freedom. You have to live within the law of driving. You can't drive faster than that because you'll get a ticket. And you'll get marks against you and you'll probably go to jail eventually if you keep doing it over and over. So there's license. Everything that we have been given in life is within restrictions. So true freedom is to live within the perimeters of a license. And rights and responsibilities, to have that right, you have to be responsible. These are very important to us as Muslims. We believe that following the guidelines of Allah, of God Almighty, will make us better people. And these guidelines are flexible. Sometimes we think things are written in stone. You know, if a woman or a man have issues with one another, there's not only A option. There's A to Z options on how you can resolve that issues. And so in Islam, there's a flexibility in many of the issues that we resolve with one another. And so in the weeks and the days and the months ahead, if you investigate Islam, I would encourage you to investigate Islam from its true source. If you want to go and you want to buy bread, you don't go to a butcher or you don't go to a fruit vendor to find out where you can buy bread. You buy bread from a baker or a mall where they sell bread. That would be the best place to go. So in investigating the rights and responsibilities of Muslims, we encourage you not to go to the crazy guy on YouTube or the strange guy who's writing a blog. Rather go to a scholar who's actually done proper studies. Someone who studied at a respected institution, not someone who studied at a back laboratory somewhere, you know, self-made. We want someone who has a credible background when asking and investigating Islam. And so that's what we would encourage you to do, God willing. I think the brother wants to open the floor to questions, but I'll let him take over.
Thank you, Sheikh, for that wonderful keynote speech. We'll now move on to the much anticipated question and answer session. There are note cards on your chairs if you guys don't want to speak up with the microphone. But yeah, we are passing the microphone around. Please write down the questions if you have them on the note card, and raise your hand and you can send them up, go send them up. You're free to ask any questions you want regarding Islam or pertaining to the topic, but please be respectful to your peers and the speakers. So yeah, pass your note cards to Sister Marwa. Sheikh Orono can answer your question, and Dr. Mahmoud can also answer your questions.
Just to get a little bit of familiarity. My name is Mahmoud al-Bujari, and I was a professor at the University of Maine for a long time, and I lived here in Maine more than any other place in the world, including my birthplace of Egypt. That does not necessarily make me a Maine, but it's definitely qualifying Maine to be my second home. So I'd be more than pleased to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Bismillah, in the name of God. Okay, Bismillah means in the name of God, so not personally what you're saying. Sometimes we speak in Arabic or Islam, you know, Muslims, it's so part of our character to use Islamic terms all the time. We forget that we say inshallah and things like that. What do you say in personal? So if I say something and I don't translate it, just put your hand up and I'll translate it. Okay, I'm going to read some of these questions. What happens if the Sharia law conflicts the state or government law? The country that we live in, we have to follow those laws because we're under that control of that country. So when you enter into America, as we fly in, when I fly in, there is a big chart there as you fly in. And it is the responsibility of a tourist, somebody, an alien coming into America, you have to agree to that. And if you break those laws, you will be punishable. So we have to, when we get our visa, when we get our passport saying we are acknowledging it, we will obey the laws of America, of the United States. That's what we are doing. So if you're living in America, regardless of what Islam teaches, we have to obey the law of the country. Because the laws of America do not go against the laws of Islam. There's nothing in the American Constitution that I've ever read, or the basic laws of America that go against it. But we wouldn't, for example, go to certain countries where those laws are not protected. We won't go to North Korea because we'll be beaten up, we won't be allowed to practice our religion properly, our books may be confiscated, things like that. So we go there. And many countries have the right to reject your entry because you don't want to obey those laws. So they don't conflict with each other. So many people would move to a place or a country that agrees with the core beliefs of Islam. Like I said yesterday, that there are, one of the things that I'm very impressed with America is they allow conversations like this to take place. In a country that is predominantly Christian, maybe the same thing would not happen in an Arab country. So this is something that speaks volumes of the community in America, and especially to your government, to allow freedom of speech like this. If there is no separation of church and state, how can non-Muslims live in a Muslim? How can non-Muslims live in a Muslim country? Muslims and non-Muslims can live. If you go to live in Saudi Arabia, for example, and you're a Christian, you want to go live in Saudi Arabia, there are areas that you can live in, and you can practice your religion, you can practice your beliefs. Only certain areas, obviously, like very sacred areas, like, for example, the Kaaba, there wouldn't be a church, or there wouldn't be a place like that. Like the Vatican City, I don't think they've got a mosque for us. But we respect that, because that is the right to do that. Not many places in the world are like that. Mostly very holy or very sacred to those religions would only allow that specific religion to have the place. Buddhism would be the same, Hinduism would be the same. So I think that sort of covers that, hopefully. God willing. Would a positive depiction of the prophet with his face covered be acceptable? I ask because I know there are historical depictions in existence with the face covered of the prophet. You'll see that many times in Islam we don't have like depictions of Jesus, peace be upon him, or Abraham, peace be upon him, or the prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. We don't make pictographs of them or pictures of them. And there's a very good logical reason for this. If we had to do that, and we had to draw a picture of perhaps Jesus with blonde hair, blue eyes, long wavy hair, then everyone's going to think he was a Caucasian with blue eyes, came from Germany, and that's where he was. We would forget his historical connection to where he actually came from. That he was from Palestine, he grew up in the Middle East, that part of the world. We would lose that. And we would, as each artist would add onto it, he would change. And we see this a lot with Greek art and Roman art. The early days of the way they depicted, for example, John the Baptist, peace be upon him. He had curly, Greek-looking features, and as the years went by, he became more the wild man living in the desert, crazy-looking guy. And that's the artist's interpretation. And eventually people start to believe that. When we think of the Christmas scene, often we think of like the snow falling down, Jerusalem and things like that. And that's become part of the scene now. We forget what the text said about it, and we start following the artist's idea of it. And so in Islam, we sort of say, let's not do that at all. Let's not do any depictions of anybody, so we don't cause division or confusion years down the line. And just keep things very simple. If you want to have a depiction of the prophets or any of the prophets, when they make a film or a documentary, you'll see that they maybe just show from the neck down, or maybe they will see like a bright light where they cover up the face, so that people don't get distracted by the wrong things, and just keep it simple. That's also why we don't have statues, or you'll see there's no paintings or anything in the room. There's only, in Arabic, maybe the names of Allah. There's only one name for Allah. There's only one name for God, and that is God. But all the other words that are in front of it are explanations of the character of God. Like God the most forgiving, God the most compassionate, God the most merciful, God the oft-forgiving. So that's what it would say. They're not 99 gods. Or 99, there's just 99 explanations to the characteristics of God. And so, as a Muslim, they're beautiful because we can, sometimes we do something wrong. So, but you said you're often merciful. You're like often merciful, or you're most merciful. So, in a way, it's good for us. What is the Muslim response to Catholic depictions of Christ? Regardless of what religion or what belief, we wouldn't do that, but we believe, not that we allow, we believe you have the right to do what you like. So if you want to have a crucifix outside your church or on the roof or whatever, or the steeple, we're not going to come and moan about that. It's your right to do that. Just like we have minarets, those domes that you might have seen earlier in the pictures here. There's like dome things, like an ice cream. That is our depiction. By the way, the moon and the star have nothing to do with it. That's just modern development. But there's no historical connection to the moon and the star that we have it in. Many times you'll see like the moon and the star and you say, oh, that's Islam. And the Christians have the cross and Greek have the Star of David and so on. We don't have symbols or anything like that. We just have Islam. So if you want to do that, I think that's fine. You want to take the question?
Well, let me also, actually, that crescent that is used as a symbol of Islam, it was not created by Muslims. You will be interested to know that created by the British to identify Muslims compared to the Star of David for Jews and a cross for Christians. So they had to have something, and it takes on from there. There is a question, say that in the Quran we first see Muhammad as being hesitant to teach his revelation and about his instruction with Allah. And what gave him the confidence to start preaching Allah's message? Well, that's an interesting question because first revelation that he received, that the Prophet, peace be upon him, received, he did not tell the entire world about it. He went home and told his wife. And that was Khadija. You might hear that name or see it on the internet when you try to see what text of Islam is all about. And then from that, he took it to his uncle, which he was the protector of the Prophet, peace be upon him, until he passed away. But along the way, he gained, with the help of Allah, the power to talk to people about the revelation that he received. And the Quran in its entirety was revealed over 23 years. So it was enough time for the Prophet, peace be upon him, to get used to who to talk to first and how he would take the message beyond his immediate companions and family members.
We'll take a microphone question.
Hello.
Okay.
Hello.
Good day.
Can you hear me, brother?
Yes, we can hear.
Thank you. I'm glad I'm here tonight because it doesn't surprise me that I had learned many things here. Some of the people that I recognize. Thank you for coming to this country.
Thank you for that, Sam.
You know, when I was looking at that thing up there, it said about fundamentalists and extremists, I told one of the brothers there, we natives are considered terrorists in this country. Truthfully, we're still a national threat to this government. I don't, real quick, what I want to say is that I don't hate the white man, I just don't like his policies towards Native people. My understanding is that the true teachings of Islam is that You don't go around blowing up houses and killing innocent men and women. Now, the sad thing about it is, I'm sure you've heard this, brother, that there are over 100 Americans that are fighting for ISIS, which I do not approve, or anybody. It's very sad that our brothers and sisters of this country have decided to join ISIS to kill, and they don't even know if they're killing. I think they've been brainwashed. But I want to ask you two questions, if you can answer to the best of your ability. How is the Islam nation or Muslim nation feel truthfully on the state of Israel? And also, what is the Muslim nation of this country and all over the world, how do they feel that, what is the real solution to solving the problem, the difficulty that ISIS is recruiting men, women, and children of any culture to kill innocent people? Thank you.
First, let's look at how the question that you said, how the Muslim nation or the Muslims of the world look at Israel. Israel was created to protect the Jews from persecution, and that's a premise that is understood all over the world. The Holocaust was the trigger of the Zionists to start thinking about how they can protect Jews. In history, Jews were persecuted in Europe. And when they were being killed by Christians in Spain, they asked the Ottoman Empire to protect them. And indeed, they took them all to those that they wanted protection under the Ottoman Empire. They took them to Istanbul, Turkey. And until today, they're synagogue in Istanbul for Jews. The problem is created when the protection of one people is based on the destruction of another people. And we hope that things will develop in the right way where both Jews and Palestinians have their own independent states.
Jazakallah, thank you very much for the question. Just to add, there is as many divergent voices on the issue of Palestine amongst Muslims as there are amongst non-Muslims. Both of us will probably disagree on the same issue. One of us might say a two-state solution, I believe in a one-state solution. I do not believe in a two-state solution. But I'm a minority. And so everyone has a right to difference of opinion on issues of political freedom, controlling your own political history or future. This is up to the individual. And so as far as politics is concerned, Islam is involved in it. Like we said, we don't separate politics and religion. But when dealing with political issues like that, we also believe in the rights of those people who live there, previous to the Jewish occupation and post-occupation. So if Palestine and Israel are to be allies with one another, they have to stop with all their nonsense. Seriously. We looked in South Africa and we saw what happened there. It was impossible to resolve the issues in South Africa. Totally impossible. Yet they were able to do it. The miracle was done. Today, the South African government is run by three parties that are totally opposite to each other. It's a three-party state that run the entire country. A Communist Party, a Nationalist Party, and a union. So three total opposites are able to work together for the good of the community. So it can be done. It just takes will from both sides. But I don't want to get too much into politics with that, because these are sensitive issues. And I understand that there's a lot of political past that's happened in America that Americans are not proud of. And there's a political history that Canadians are not proud of. And there's a political history that South Africans are not proud of. But we have to now move forward. What has done is done. We have to now try to resolve these issues and move forward. Talking of which, there was an article that was given here, which is a really terrible article. It's the first time I've seen it. And so I'll probably have to react to it now. An Afghani cleric, according to this article, has condoned the stabbing of a woman and smashing a brick in her head after she was accused of burning the Quran and Islamic holy book. The article goes on. Regretfully, we observe that there are many Muslims all over the world that are not true representatives of Islam. That they commit these grievous mistakes, these grievous behaviors, and serious offenses. But these are not the practices and beliefs of Muslims. These are practices and beliefs of individuals. It is very easy for us to say, separate the Muslim from Islam. That should not be the case. We don't allow the same thing with Christians. We don't say to a Christian, separate Christianity from Christians. We say that they should be the same. And so we are not using this as a cop-out or an excuse. What we are saying is that we have to be mindful that, sadly, this is a reality when certain individuals are given perhaps too much power in their beliefs and their religion. You know, we've seen this in the history of many different religions, whether it be Buddhists or Christians or atheists or agnostics, where we found that people have too much power, sometimes they abuse that power. And there's a good thing when we are answerable. In Islam, we have something called the Jamiat al-Ulama, which is the Council of Muslim Theologians, which makes Muslims accountable to other scholars, accountable to other scholars. So if we see somebody going out of line, he's doing something that is totally against Islam, what will be written is a fatwa. You've heard this word, I'm sure. A fatwa will be written by the Muslim theologians condemning that action, speaking against that action and telling them that this person is out of the behavior of a Muslim. That is about all we can really do unless there's legal action taken against them by those countries. So unfortunately, this type of thing does happen, and it came attached with a piece of paper. I think that it was, so it says, please, when you speak out against this is an outrage. We 100% agree that this is an outrage, and we would be the first people to write a reaction to this article, to the media about this, and we'd speak out against it. We do this frequently. This is an atrocity. We publicly say this. And if any of you have seen any of my previous writings or talks, you'll see that I, since early 2003, 2004, have spoken out against these type of acts and atrocities. And we are totally against it. And not even 99% of Muslims, 100% of Muslims are against this. Sadly, there are some people that have manipulated small groups or small pockets of people and manipulate them. Exactly like we were speaking about, brother, when you spoke about how 100 Americans have joined ISIS. This is terrible. This is an atrocity if people would be manipulated and fooled into this. And one of the questions here was actually regarding that. How do we prevent extremism? Why are Muslims not more vocal against extremism? Fear of Allah, why do they not fear Allah? Why do they not fear God? The beginning of wisdom is the fear of God. We all believe this. Jews, Muslims, Christians, we all believe that. But we don't always practice that. And the fear is reverence more than terror. You know, it's knowing what the right thing to do is. And we all know that what is right and what is wrong. And we do speak out against it. We just wish that more people would see that we are speaking out against it. If you go to blog after blog, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, you will see that Muslims are speaking out against it. But a young person, a youth today, and if you're a young person, I'm sorry I have to say this, but it's true. Their emotions are like a heartbeat. 1 minute they're hot, 1 minute they're cold. 1 minute they're excited, 1 minute they're not. One of the accusations that was made, and I 100% believe this, by the way, on the UK television, was that those 3 girls, remember the 3 girls that went over to join ISIS and all over the media? They said, oh, they were watching Housewives of Atlanta, and the next day they were off to go join ISIS. That is typical youth. That is what you'd expect, regardless of whether they're religious or not. They go from one day they're super religious, and the next day they're super secular. This is just part of growing up. It's part of being youth, as being a young person. So we have to be extra cautious with our kids. We have to be extra cautious with our youth. I'm not saying that you now have to be a policeman over them the whole time, but just speak to them about these things. As Muslims, I would encourage the Muslim community to sit with your kids and say, this is not good, and explain why it's not good. Don't just say, oh, haram, and then walk off. No, bad, walk off. You have to explain it to them. And the non-Muslim community as well, speak to your kids, speak to the youth, and warn them against these things. Protect them. It's your duty and your responsibility. And it's such a difficult time for youth because they're getting influenced by so many different social platforms from friends and communities. So we have to become more responsible citizens as far as looking after our youth are concerned.
One of the things that I hear about recruiting, how ISIS recruits, and mostly those who are actually from the West, the United States and Europe, they prey on the fact, well, you accept Islam, so you became a Muslim. So you have to do jihad in order to support your conversion to Islam. And I'm here to tell you there is not such a thing. There is no way that you say, well, so for me to become a good Muslim, I have to go out and join ISIS and kill more people. But this is not knowledge that is known to everybody, so even if a parent wanted to talk to a child, if he doesn't know that, then it's not going to come up in a conversation.
And just to explain the word jihad, jihad means to struggle. We all know this, I'm sure you've all heard it already. There are two types of jihad. There's a greater and a lesser jihad. The lesser jihad is going into physical battle where you're defending your land from attack, not going to attack somebody else's land. So if somebody comes into your home and violates your home, that is the lesser jihad to fight and defend your home. The greater jihad is the general struggle that we go from day to day. I want that extra piece of cake. I want to have another cookie. That's the greater jihad. That's fighting against things that we know maybe are not always good for us. And they're internal, no one else is even going to know about them. So this is what jihad actually means when you look at it in the proper sense. What does the Quran say, or the prophetic teachings about the limits of freedom of speech? And it talks basically, the question goes on to, in America there is freedom of speech, but it's guided by certain rules. You can't say racist things, you can't, it's like liberal laws, laws about hate speech and so on. Does Islam have anything to say about that? Absolutely it does. It has, there are limits with everything. Everything there is a limit. You can go this far but no further. Everything has been limited in Islam. There are many famous stories, for example, when other tribes used to come and visit the Prophet to come and look what Islam was all about. They would be maybe Christians or from maybe agnostics or whatever they might be, pagans. And they would come to visit the Prophet. And it wasn't a hotel there. It wasn't like a university inn or something like this one here down there. It was rough, and people would sleep in the mosque. They'd come sleep in the mosque. And they didn't know the rules. Some people would just go to the side of the mosque and start urinating. Another person would throw spears at each other in the middle of the mosque. And they didn't know the rules and regulations. And the Prophet didn't freak out and go, haram, what's this man doing? No. He said, listen, they don't know any better. They don't know the rules and the regulations. Don't scream at them, don't shout at them. In fact, the one person wanted to go correct the man. And he said, leave him, he doesn't know anything. There was restrictions given on correcting behavior. There was much more tolerance, there was much more understanding. And so there are countless numbers of examples in Islam where you see the Prophet being very tolerant and teaching the generations after him to be tolerant. And in the early writings of Islam, for maybe 200, 300, 400 years, the writings that we trust. After that, the writings become a little more dubious. But the ones that we trust are the ones that are the earliest, the first 100, 200 years. Those ones that we use today quite a lot in Islam. Those ones gave very clear instruction on tolerance and understanding and freedom of speech, how far you can go, how far you shouldn't go. Alhamdulillah. You want to take anything to
Just to speak to those who commit those crimes in defending the Prophet, peace be upon him, by defaming him in pictures, or I would like you to know that he personally, during his life, was subjected to much, much more than that. So for someone to come to tell me that when I see the picture of the Prophet defamed and I have to stand up for him, and I say, well, you stand up for him the same way he stood up for himself. And when he was ridiculed in every meaning of the word, there is a small town in Saudi Arabia, in the northern part of Saudi Arabia, it's called Ta'if. And he went there to speak to the people about Islam. And what did they do to him? They threw stones at him. And he came back with blood going down from his face because of the injury that he got from this treatment. So the angel Jibreel, who is the angel that relate to the revelation, he came down to him and he said, would you like me to ask Allah to get these two mountains together and do away with this place altogether? What he responded, he said no. Because out of them it may come a generation of good Muslims. He did not ask the army to go and find those out and kill them. No. So please understood that, and when you hear something like that, I would like you to respond. Thank you.
The next question is a good one, so I'm going to put it right to the top of the list. There are other ones that were here, I would answer everyone, but there's not enough time to answer everybody's questions. Afterwards, you're welcome to come and speak to us and ask us. So I'm going to deal with the more controversial ones, not the non-controversial ones. So this one is that, what is Wahhabism? And what is your opinion about the interpretation of Islam? There are many different groups of Islam. They're not just, in Christianity there are hundreds of different Christian denominations. In Islam we have things like denominations as well. But on the core beliefs we have 100% agreement on. The 5 pillars of Islam, we agree on them. The basic tenets of Islam we agree on. We differ on slight interpretations of things, on where you hold your hands when you pray. Some of the churches see people lift their hands up like this, Catholics will hold it like this, the Anglicans maybe like this, Presbyterians maybe put their thumb over, whatever it is. That's a little tiny thing, no one worries about that. So there are differences between the different groupings within Islam, a number of different groups. Now, Wahhabism, normally, it's a lot in the media. A lot of journalists will speak about Wahhabi or Salafi or things like that.